The pomp and pageantry, Queen Elizabeth II in attendance, visiting dignitaries, millions spent, and the capital brought to a virtual standstill. This was the controversial fashion in which Baroness Thatcher took her final bow on the public stage. Perhaps this has inspired staunch supporters of Tony Blair, who argue the former Prime Minister should be in line for a similar send-off. Chris Nynham from Stop the War thinks the very suggestion is outrageous.
It would be a terrible thing if a man who many people in this country believe is a war criminal, a man who the majority believe took us into a war that we should never have been involved in, a war that led to the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people. If this man was recognised in that way, it would be a very black day for this country, in my opinion.
Despite claims that Britain would never see another multi-million-pound ceremony, as witnessed with Margaret Thatcher, Cabinet Minister Francis Maude, who helped plan the occasion, said he would not object if similar plans were tabled for Blair. Like Margaret Thatcher before him, Tony Blair remains an incredibly divisive figure. In some sections, he's lauded as the man who reinvented British politics, ushering the era of spin. But for others, millions of Brits still see him as the Prime Minister who lied to Parliament and took the country into an illegal war. There was mixed reaction on the idea of a state-like funeral for Tony Blair.
No.
Why not?
No. Because he went to Iraq war without any firm ground.
He goes on to other things. He's doing extremely well for himself. No, I don't think he deserves a state funeral. Most definitely not.
I think I would, to a certain extent. I think that the amount it costs, the money could be spent on better things. But I think it's good to recognise someone's achievements throughout a career, especially when they've had such an influence on the country.
Tony Blair led the Labour Party between 1994 to 2007. This alone should not guarantee him being feted in death, according to his critics.
There's all sorts of people in history who were prominent, who were influential, who no one would dream of organising a massive commemoration for. In the case of both Margaret Thatcher and Tony Blair, these are people who, they're not just divisive, they're people who the vast majority of the population think did terrible things to their country and actually to other countries around the world. And in that sense, to have, state funerals by any other name for them is really unacceptable and disgraceful.
Whitehall sources say there have been no firm plans made on funeral arrangements for surviving British Prime Ministers. And at only 60 years old, Tony Blair may well have many more controversial years ahead of him. Amina Taylor, Press TV, London.